Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Moraz.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and first and foremost, I would like to thank all the people who have helped me, including Gary Davis, Christine Holz, Luke Johnson, Steve Kratz and Eileen Kratz, Phyllis Whitesell Lakatos, David Moraz, my son, who should be around, and his friend, and the Red Lion Hotel and its direction, because they've put an accommodation for me this afternoon, which I hoped for, but I didn't expect, and I feel great, you know. So it's nice to see you. I wish we could multiply you by 10 and recreate the atmosphere of one of the Yes concerts I've done many of, and I will certainly enjoy playing for you.
Well, we've asked everybody to prepare some questions for you, and let's start off. Jeff Foster, he says, Patrick, do you ever miss being in Yes? Do you hear them do something and wish you would have been a part of it?
As a matter of fact, when Yes reformed for this Union tour in 1991, and the 15th of May, I saw them at the Forum, which was for me a great gig. And then later on, I think the 6th of August of that same year in Costa Mesa, I wished that I could have at least played either one of the tunes we used to play together, which I was part of at the composition and at the inception of the compositional stages, including, of course, Awaken, which I took a very, very big part in the writing of, if not most of it. But with my new keyboards and actually very limited keyboards, like you will see today, I've brought with me one of my babies. It's just an 01W. It's a regular one, and I always enjoy playing that. I wish that I could have played in 1991 and got eventually notified or been invited to play some of the gigs, especially since I was no longer with the Moody Blues by then, and I had said actually I would not go to play with Yes because I was still with the Moody's, but there was probably a mishap, and everything happens for a reason. The reason was actually to meet you here today and discover me, probably.
Well, we're glad you're here. And Karen brought up a question regarding the Moody Blues, which is a big part of your past. Now that you and the Moody Blues have parted professional company, is there any chance you might join up with another established musical group?
Actually, sorry.
Is there a chance you might establish yourself or become a part or join another established musical group?
No, I think this time I will invite people to join me.
Good answer. Okay, you've already got the piano and the keyboard set up, and somebody would like to know, let me see, Dwayne would like to know if you can play some of To Be Over later on, so we'll see if that comes into play.
I'll put it in my, I always do requests, although I don't always do requests the way people request me to do requests. But I'll include it in one of my improvisations.
Okay, and Tim Morris wants to know, do you have a favorite solo album?
Of whom?
Of yours.
Oh, of mine. Okay. I would have said the Six Wives of Henry VIII. genuinely, you know. I very much respect Rick. We're very good friends, and you know, we've had different paths and so on. And I respect every musician who actually has enough creativity and enough courage, and to be a musician and to be just that, and to carry on being a musician and to carry on being a fan, and to be, because you know, don't forget one thing, I'm upstage here today. I've got a very big privilege to be invited here, but what I'm going to be playing today, especially when I'm going to be improvising, and you don't know what it's going to be, I don't know either, but it's going to pass through you first, because you're going to give me the the vibes, and that's what music is all about. Music is about creativity and communication, and that's what we're doing today. So the music is as much yours today as it's mine. So, on that note, thank you. On that note, my favorite album so far, I think, really is Windows of Time, my latest piano solo release. I'm not saying that because it's just been released nowadays, and I have to, obviously, I would like to that everybody hears Windows of Time in the philosophy that, you know, the whole of the parts is greater than the parts. Of course, that doesn't apply here, but in the philosophy of the should as opposed to the must, I think everybody should hear Windows of Time at least once.
And we will today. You do a lot of instant compositions, and you've recorded them over the years. How many do you keep track of those? And how do you come about those? Where do they
very
derive
hard
from?
to keep track, of course, of all the glow doodlings I do, you know, either in music or in art or in graphic arts or even writing. Windows of Time will give you, of course, an aperçu of what I can come up with within 14 hours and reduce it to exactly 1 hour. I make a point to record and to actually compose one piece of music at least every day, and I do compose between 1 piece to 25 pieces every day, fully orchestrated, or fully orchestrated at least in my head. If I actually record on piano, if I record just on a straight piano, it will be on a cassette or on a DAT or whatever. If I haven't got any recording means like a sequencer or anything like that, I will write down just a sketch to remember what I've come up with. But generally speaking, I've written more than 4,500 pieces of music, out of which 750 are kind of running around the planet, being played in, not elevators, but in radio stations somewhere. I think I've got 175 jingles in one radio station in Switzerland. This is A Day a Symphony, which I wrote in 1985 for the Swiss radio. And I have probably, you know, from the 37 movie scores I've done, at least 20 of them are being shown in, if not in AMC theaters, which I'm a client of as well, because I like big movies, I like adventure movies. As you know, I've been asked to cooperate to write and to coordinate or to supervise or to write theme scores for like movies like Predator, or I wrote the full score for The Stepfather, for example, and so on. These 20 movies are running also around the planet every day, and eventually I receive a check from BMI for 99 cents every 4 years.
And what do you do in your spare time? I mean, really.
Well, I mean, people probably don't know that, but I do think and play music and dream music and creativity, not only music, you know. I do a lot of teachings and a lot of, I've had to not reduce myself to teach, no, on the contrary. I think it's a very honorable profession to be asked by such and such university or such and such personalities in the educational systems, like, for example, Richard Bandler and NLP and Design Human Engineering, or the University of Boulder in Colorado, or Princeton University, or Northridge, or USC, or the Harbor College in San Pedro, and MIT here in Los Angeles to give lectures and seminars and so on. I'm very honored to be able to share my experience, and I'm always ready to learn, because I'm learning more from teaching than people imagine, you know, and actually teach much less than I learn.
Where do you think the source of your creativity, where does that come from?
I think it comes from a consciousness that I've developed over the years. I'm an empirical, conscious, creative person. And one day I realized that the right note at the right time, at the right place, means creativity, whatever it is.
And this is from, no, there's no name on this card either. You guys didn't put your names on here. When you recorded I, was Jeff Berlin still attending Berkeley?
No, he was just out of Berkeley, and he was the most brilliant bass player of his kind, you know, and he was extremely trained, as opposed to myself, who was not extremely trained as such. You know, I mean, I've trained myself through experience with groups, with sessions, and so on. I couldn't write probably as fast as him and organize my musical thoughts, and I've learned a great deal from him, and I've always been very grateful to him to have accepted my invitation to play, and he did a fantastic job. And I think he's around LA, and one of these days I'm going to give him a call, because I've just seen his number in Musician Magazine, you know, locally.
We have to give him a call, and maybe we can get you to work together again.
Maybe.
Okay, what was your favorite group or band experience while in Yes?
My favorite band while in Yes was, well, I mean, I tell you what, I've had so much to ingest and to experience with Yes, and to learn and to exchange and to share, and also to display, that Yes really very much occupied most of my thoughts at the time I was with Yes, but I had my eyes at the time on these transcultural experiences which I carried forward, going to Brazil, playing with Djalma Correa, playing with Arthur Moreira, playing with Milton Nascimento, making the world discover that there is also other musics than just rock and white rock, you know, and collage rock and whatever was called art rock at the time. Peter Gabriel always impressed me, and was very impressed with my transcultural experiences, especially with the percussionists, to the point that he asked me, when I came with the Story of I released, asked me if I could give him the tapes of all my percussion sessions, and I said, instead of giving you the tape, I'm going to give you the phone numbers of all the percussionists I've played with in Brazil. And he actually phoned them 10 years later, and he did whatever he did with Bomad and so on, and we discussed Africa at the time, which I had already been more than 40 times, you know. By the time I had done Story of I had been living in Africa in different countries, including the provinces of Rumziki, Burundi, Senegal, of course, Kenya, Gabon. I've been in Khartoum, in Sudan, in Tanganyika, Lake Tanganyika. I've been to Republic of Central Africa. I've been to Sierra Leone, to all the North African coast. I've studied with the Moroccan percussionists, with the Egyptian percussionists, with the Libyan percussionists, with the Moors, with the Chadian percussionists, and you know, with the Senegalese and the Mali, and all the African music was actually second nature to me. By the time I had done my first solo album with Yes, because I imported those percussionists already to Switzerland and to Europe in 1968.
I think one of the questions he wanted on the card, it says, your most memorable Yes experience, was there when you were with Yes? What happened? Was it on the road? Could it have been? What's your most memorable Yes experience?
The kidnapping of Ahmet Ertegun in Nashville, 1975. It must have been in August. And we kidnapped Ahmet Ertegun, the five of us, you know, John, Chris, Alan, Steve, and myself. And we actually tied him down to a bed in the hotel, in that it was the Hyatt Hotel in Nashville. And we actually talked to him in terms of, we don't get enough promotion, we don't get enough sales, we want to do this, we want to do that, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. And I actually had been able to talk to him in French, because when I used to talk to Ahmed and to Nezui, dear Nezui passed away a few years ago, I was more close to Nezui Ertegun than Ahmed, but we used to talk in French because as sons of ambassadors, and the ambassadors of the sons of the ambassador of Turkey to Washington, They were raised actually at the Rosé in Rolle, and they were raised in Switzerland, in France, and so on. And they were multilinguists, like I was, and I've always been, you know.
How many languages do you speak fluently?
7.
And?
7.
We've got people here from Japan, we've got people here from Germany, and we've got people from Canada. We've got people from all over the country today, so...
Alors, comment ça va le Canada ici? Vous êtes qui vient du Canada? Eh ben, on peut se parler en français alors. Non, mais ça c'est le Canada. Ils viennent de Vancouver. Ok.
Okay, Mark wants...
Si parla italiano?
9.
Você falou português? I know that the bass player of John Anderson in his band is from Brazil or from Argentina.
Yeah, I think they're in the green room.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Tudo bem, cara?
Mark wants to know if you and Bill Bruford plan to do any more shows or albums together. And I think there's a lot of people that want to know that. Do you ever plan to work together?
I certainly would like to invite Bill Bruford to play in one of my upcoming projects, and you'll know probably more about this project later. I think we have to leave here at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, we've got time tonight.
Okay, good. I'd love to invite Bill to, and I will invite him officially to one of my projects. I've already invited, I have people and percussionists from all over the world already committed to the project, and I can name a few percussionists and a few names like Djalma Correa. I have the people like Dave Wackel, Chad Wackerman's brother, the whole Chad Wackerman, the whole Wackerman family. The all drummers except one of them is a bass player, and that's one of the brothers. The dad, and I have a famous Jacob Arman who doesn't live very far from here, the little genius I was playing last year with, who is 12 years old, and now he's 14 years old, lives in Pasadena or up there in Glendale, a few blocks away from here, you know. And I've played with him only once, and I said we were invited to the Festival of Montreux last year by Quincy Jones, and for different legal reasons we didn't make it because, you know, nitty-gritty, and but a complete and utmost genius of the first generation and of this century, a true musical genius. You know, a kid who can play giant steps at 3 years of age, and who can play every night for 4 hours his drums and outstage any drummer, including Dave Wackel and all of them, with his double bass drum, kind of, you know, very, very, very musical drummer as well, even at this age. And one of the most wonderful human beings for his age that I've ever met, you know. So I'd love to invite Bill Bruford to my project if he accepts to, of course.
Well, Mike wanted to know, how did you and Bill Bruford get together? And he said, I don't like the way this is phrased, but it's kind of nice. What made you want to work with him?
Excuse me?
Mike wants to know how you and Bill Bruford hooked up and what made you want to work with Bill.
We were in the same village. We were living in Ewhurst. My very next door neighbor was Eric Clapton for 5 years, and I was living in a property called Brackenhurst, and Bill was living actually 3-4 minutes away, and one day he knew I was there. He came to my house because he knew I was building a music room and doing demos, and doing also demos, and he wanted to do a demo for his solo album, and he brought that kid on saxophone, you know, the 16-year-old. He was then 16-year-old. His current saxophonist, Ian Bellamy. And we recorded all his demos and so on. And then eventually he discovered I was playing piano and I was playing music, and I was just not playing only twiddling knobs on the mellotron, going, you know. And he discovered that eventually we could do a duet. And it's actually in my kitchen that the whole thing came together, not in the philosophy of playing music to make money, but to have interactive fun, and also being able to go on the road and have share the same vehicle from our home to the airport, because it would cost less money. Of course, you know, Bill is very tight, and We had a very, very good, very well managed little outfit, and I must say that it's always been a pleasure to play with him. We've taken a few chances, of course, but I wished I could play with him now, the way I'm playing now, as opposed to then. I'm not regretting the way I played then, but I've practiced a bit.
When was the last time you played music for piano and drums?
It must have been the 11th of September 1985 in New York, I think, at the town hall. And that was our last gig, actually. You know, and that's the day he told me, man, even if we don't play for a while together, because I've got my other activities and I'd like to bring another electric band, and I don't know if I'm going to go back to King Crimson or anything, but one thing you can be sure of, I'll never play with those guys in Yes again.
Okay.
Famous last words.
Bruce Irwin would like to know, what was it like recording Relayer? And can you tell us about the experience? Was it a positive one? Was it challenging? How was it recording Relayer?
Recording Relayer was very, very challenging for me because, of course, I arrived in the middle of the guys in the band, not only auditioning several hundred keyboard players and having Vangelis's keyboards, which actually were wonderful instruments displayed, and there, you know, and having been invited by Brian Lane, who actually almost ran me over 2 hours before going to that rehearsal, a certain Wednesday afternoon of August 1974. I had just finished my 25th movie with Gérard Depardieu in Switzerland that Sunday, and I was actually also doing a cameo in the movie, conducting a little town hall band in Switzerland, conducting Rossini overture of Wilhelm Tell, actually, you know, and where the modulation in Cachaça, one of the pieces I did in 1975, there's a modulation going from G7s to A minor in 4 chords. I pinched from that very session from Rossini, you know, and bless his soul, of course, one of my favorite composers for opera and so on. I don't know if you're familiar with Cecilia Bartoli's beautiful rendition of one of his operas. Anyway, to cut a story short, Relayer was a very interesting experience because I never wanted really to go in the band. Yes, you know, I mean, I went to the rehearsal, I played what I played, which ended up on Soundchaser, Relayer, the album, you know, as an improv. And then I played whatever I heard, you know, after Steve explained to me, well, it goes like that, F sharp, then go up, 17 bars, then change, you do that. I said, hang on a minute, let me write that down again, you know, take a few notes. Then I thought the keyboards were a bit out of tune because they hadn't been touched, of course, by Vangelis for at least a week since they were auditioning all these other keyboard players coming from Japan, Sweden, France, this and that. And I thought, when I saw the 4 of them playing what they had composed of Relayer, including Soundchaser, parts of Soundchaser, the song, and parts of even Gates of Delirium, which was not named Gates of Delirium because the title came actually from me at the time, I was in awe to see a band playing where I thought, wow, man, that could be jazz, but it's not. It's like classical music. It's powerful. And I had seen them on stage before, and I was never really impressed that much. But that day, in the middle of it, I thought, geez, I better get my shit together. And so at first I tuned the keyboards. You know, I didn't want to be nervous. You know, like today, I'm obviously a bit nervous to speak to you. It's one of my first reappearances in front of an audience. It announces also my further current tour of Windows of Time and further activities in music. I've taken 3 years sabbatical because after 18 years on the road with Yes and the Moody's, you need a break. Anyway, Relay was a very positive but very difficult experience for me. And not only I had to learn whatever was composed, I had to come up with moving parts to fit this and that and the other. And I also had to learn virtually their 9 previous symphonies, or call them symphonic poems or whatever, in the philosophy that I always considered that as a rock and roll band, Yes could be considered the Stravinsky of rock and roll, you know. But I haven't finished. This is not only a compliment, it's also a constructive criticism, because since the main ideas were coming from 5 different minds in a meeting of the minds, as opposed to a Stravinsky's mind or a Beethoven's mind or a Mozart's mind, the continuity sometimes of the material was not as continuous as it should have been or could have been, and I ended up considering that what I was judging as being Stravinsky-esque at the time was merely collage most of the time. And my first aim was to get a parade against having collages of the music I was going to be doing with Yes. And that's where my difficulty became. It became an inherent ethical, artistic difference which grew more and more within the next 3 years. And people talk about artistic differences within bands as an excuse, you know, for band members to be eventually alleviated from a band or a situation, or fired, or whatever, or leave a band or leave a situation. But this was a true artistic difference, and it's probably the exception which confirms the rule in this world of lies, which is the world of rock and roll sometimes, you know. In terms of the power, not the music. I'm not talking about the music, I'm talking about the competitivity between managers and record companies and people getting screwed up in contracts, and you know, tax planners and accountants and lawyers and whatever, you know. I mean, you know that the 2 factions of the 2 Yeses until now have always been kind of, since actually I was no longer with the band, there's always been dissensions and so on. And I used to call it merely a festival of egos, and I think we'll stay at that for now.
Okay, being that you mentioned you were ready to embark again after a 3-year period of time off, how do you plan to prepare for this tour? Are you going to go out on a tour? Are we going to see Patrick Moraz solo Windows of Time tour?
Yes. Well, I'm ready. I play all the time, and I can't wait to have in front of me a proper list of dates and gigs, and I'm ready to play from in front of 1 people to 10,000 people every night if need be, and it's always much easier to play in front of a large amount of people than a small amount of people, and I hope that everybody will enjoy my music and my performances. Of course, I'm not going to remain only a musician to play only piano solo or whatever, which I'm going to start demonstrating today, that I'm announcing already the orchestral electronic versions with orchestra and electronics of Windows of Time. I hope to be able to do a rendition of a couple of tunes from my album, supported actually by my album, but I'm going to play freely as well. And I wish one thing to everybody, is that any musician who arrives at the venerable age of which is mine, you know, today. I was born the 24th of June 1944, as if people know that. I wish them to be as happy as I am playing music as I am when I do it. Voila.
This is a real interesting question. However, they didn't write their name on this one either. I saw you at a UFO expo. Do you believe in UFOs like John Anderson?
This is another convention. I'll see you there, though.
Well put, well put. Okay, how would you describe the difference between your playing and Rick Wakeman's styles? That's from Steve, by the way.
What can I say? It's up to the people to judge for themselves, because everybody has a different perception. You know, I know Rick is a great player. It's very very melodic. But I don't use the word melodic anymore. Melodic. You know, I use thematic. Anyway, you understand the pun. I mean, I'm not Swiss for nothing. See, in '74, I hardly could speak English. Although I had a proficiency in English, I learned English in 3 weeks. But on paper, I didn't know what melodic was. I didn't know that what apples and pears meant. You know, stairs, mate. It's a bit taters, a bit nippy, innit? You know, I didn't know all these expressions. Now I've learned English the proper way, and now I've been actually invited by an English university based in America to actually teach slang to foreigners, you know. So, to tell you the truth, I will always never condemn success. Rick's been very successful, he's been very hardworking, he's been very hard living, like me. We've all had our experiences. I think he's a great musician, he's a wonderful musician, and I wish that one day, like we did that night for Give Kids the World, we had a boogie together, and then we had Mike Franklin, my current producer of Windows of Time, who was then his producer for whatever he did, the new rendition of A Journey to the Center of the Earth. I wish that we could play together like friends, like mates, like, you know, and in the philosophy of the should, and in the philosophy of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Well put. They're both fantastic players. Larry would like...
Are we gonna be able to have enough time to sell T-shirts and CDs? I thought that's what we're here for, you know.
Well, they've been selling them all day. It's been open all day. They've been over there.
You okay, David?
Larry wants to know if you're going to do a follow-up to the story of I.
Yeah, the story of Jay.
Okay, and we have a Moody Blues related question. What was your favorite album with the Moody Blues?
My favorite recorded album experience was obviously Long Distance Voyager, because I had a lot of say in it, and for many, many reasons. Also, acquainted with the producer. It was a long story. We spent 65 weeks doing it, and so on. It's a long story. That's also another convention. It's the Moody Blues convention. I will attend it, of course, arm in arm with Justin Hayward, and it'll be great.
Well, we're very pleased that you came out to Yestival, the Yes Fan Convention, and we'd like to know if you want to do some playing for us now.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Patrick Moraz.
Thank you very much. That was great. Thank you. I'll start here. I will just announce that. Of course, bon. Everybody calls me an improviser. An improviser, according to an improvisation, according to any dictionary which is worth being tagged a dictionary, an improvisation is just a composition in real time. Now today I'm going to play my compositions, and like somebody requested a little request here, now and there, I might throw a few hints of this and that, but mainly what I'd like to do today, and I don't have much time for that, because we have to finish, I think, at 5 o'clock. Is that okay? I'd like to play you a couple of excerpts from my new solo album, Windows of Time, my first ever piano solo album, which I recorded, as you will read in the sleeve, in 14 hours during a 72-hour gap. I've recorded it in the chronology of its performance, and I've put what I deemed essential in its emotionality in terms of the music I produced during that time. And like I was saying to a few friends last night, I actually build my factory of packaging my inspiration down the valley of after having the water of my inspiration coming down. I put my factory where it was the most economical and the most logical possible. That's why I packaged it to exactly 1 hour. I didn't plan to do that. This is the first CD in the history of CD, which is exactly 60 minutes long. I didn't plan to do that. But I added a couple of seconds because I felt that musically it needed that. But you can laugh, but I recorded the music and produced 1 hour out of the 14 hours to give the listener the most enjoyable listening time in the, once again, the philosophy of the emotional time, the felt time, not the packaged time for commercial purposes or whatever, or radio airplay or whatever, you know. A lot of people rehearse their music so much that it kind of stale until they record it. What I did is I improvised most of it, or I recreated some of the pieces I had already composed over the years. There's even one piece which I recorded in 1949, composed, which is the beginning of the piece number 5, and I'll probably play it for you, and you will see that I can be an improviser, but I can also play the pieces the way they've been written.
Okay, great. Well, we're gonna get a listen of what's coming out, and if you want to hear more, you're gonna have to pick up the record right over there.
How about a warm thank you, Patrick Moraz?
Thank you very much. Okay. You know, you make me cry today. I mean, there's nothing wrong in crying in public, you know. I don't generally do that, but I'm so emotional today. Invited by the University of Zurich and ITT. I didn't know ITT was mixed up in so many other things, you know. I was only considering the artistic project. And I wrote that piece, the overture, which I did the first rendition of the 19th of June at 9:20 in the morning at the University of Zurich. Having flown from England that very morning, I wrote the piece I'm going to play now the night before, the Monday, because the ship just arrived from Boston, you know, from Waltham, Massachusetts, from the Kurzweil company, which I've represented since 1983. And I didn't even know what I was getting. So I'm going to do a little cadenza so I can improvise a little bit as well today. And I'll be very short, then we'll sign autographs, and then I'll finish tonight with this overture to the Modular Symphony. And I'll dedicate it to you and all the Yes fans in the world.
Thank you, Patrick Moraz.
Rock and roll!
By the way, Patrick will be over here signing autographs as well as Peter.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm not joking. I know the feeling. Sorry.
I'm the author of the new book about yes. Did you get it?